Okay, we're still on page 355, talking about the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a very popular pop psychology book. So let me just go through the list. The first one is be proactive. Okay, that kind of makes sense. Anticipate and plan problems. Don't just sit around and wait for things to happen. Take a few minutes to say, it's very possible this might occur, so I need to do something about it. Begin with the end in mind. How's that for good stuff? Basically, focus on the value that the people are contributing to this thing, not on the mechanics. In other words, it's the goal that matters, not the actual path you take. Put first things first. Basically, use a time management system so that you're not off on a tangent doing things that are not important or doing things out of sequence, that kind of thing. Think win-win. So whenever you have a conflict, try to find a scenario where everyone wins, not a compromise where, one person, okay. Win-win, everybody comes out okay. Compromise, everybody gets about half what they need, and then somebody loses, somebody wins. So that's basically the choices. So consider win-win. Seek first to understand. Basically, don't shoot from the hip. Don't just say, wow, okay, we're going to do this. No, stop and try to understand what they're talking about. And we're going to go into that in a lot more detail in just a few minutes. So, synergize. I hate that term. But basically, they're talking about collaboration. And then sharpen the saw. Okay, it's kind of dumb. Basically, they're talking about renew yourself. Every once in a while, you need to stop and get, rest and relax, both your brain and your body. So, physically, spiritually, and mentally relax a while and kind of come up with a rest period so that when you go back to work, you can be in better shape. So they talk about some techniques here. One is they call the rapport technique. And this is in order to be able to have a good relationship and be able to understand things, you really need to have an easy to talk to kind of a vibe. You need to have one of those people who can. It's easy to go talk to the boss. If the boss is some rough, gruff guy, no, what are you doing in my office? Get out of there. You need to be approachable. People can come to you and say, boss, I've got an idea. If they don't feel comfortable with that, well, then you're never going to get any ideas, right? Okay. Mirroring. Mirroring is the technique of either copying their behavior, or even if it's bad behavior. In the case study, if you recall, this guy, slammed the book on the table and started yelling, and the other person stood up and started yelling too. And if you do that, it sounds disruptive, right? Having two people yell. But what it really do, it'll show how absurd the position is. And they'll look at it and go, oh, really? Do I really sound like a crazy maniac? Oh, okay. In theory. Hopefully they're not really crazy maniacs. In that case, yelling at them isn't going to do anything. But anyway, mirroring. It's also what you can do with mirroring is, okay, I'm having an interview with a guy and the guy's doing this in his chair. Well, then you would do that in your chair. You would kind of mirror whatever they were doing, right? Okay, that's what mirroring is all about. And then, of course, this thing called empathic listening. The purpose for this is I really need to understand. I'm not just listening to their story. I'm trying to listen to the story and understand it. So you would interject little questions and affirmations to make sure you're on the right track and make sure you're understanding them. I kind of do this occasionally when somebody asks a question on a tech support website. And they'll say, well, how come this doesn't work? And I'll say, are you talking about this? Or are you talking about this? And if you are talking about this, then we'll try, So I'm trying to pull information out of them so I can understand what the problem is. And so these 3 techniques, rapport, mirroring, and empathic listening, is how you get that communication thing going. Without communication, you're never going to figure out what motivates your employees. You'll never know what the good ideas are that they have. And, it'll be a complete divide between you and the workers. Emotional intelligence on page 357. So instead of just IQ, there's emotional intelligence. So this is about knowing and managing your own emotions, plus being able to recognize and manage. Perhaps manage is right, not really a good word, but managing the emotions of others. If you can't tell, then if you're one of those people who can't tell if people are happy or upset, then there's always a scene in The Big Bang Theory where the Sheldon character is trying to figure out if somebody is being sarcastic or not, and you can't tell. Okay. So, emotional intelligence. There's an awful lot of very cool statistics there on page 358. Take a minute to read that. For example, they're talking about companies. They said 71% say that emotional intelligence is more important in a work environment than IQ. Okay? In other words, people that are nice and easy to work with versus, in other words, are they nice or are they smart? Well, to tell you the truth, when it comes to working environment, we really prefer people to be nice and easy to work with. And if they have intelligence, that's great. But that's not our primary concern. 59% said they wouldn't hire someone who had a high IQ and a low emotional intelligence. 75% said they would likely promote someone with a high EI rather than IQ. Okay, so this is kind of sort of important, this emotional intelligence stuff. Okay, continuing on page 358, they talk about leadership styles. And, okay, so there's a bunch of different types. One is the visionary style. And the visionary style is very handy if perhaps your company is getting ready to do something completely new. You're forming a new branch for a new product line. You really need visionary style leadership at that point. To tell you the truth, visionary style leaders in a assembly line setup where there's no real, you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again, those people are going to just be miserable, right? Because they really want to be, they don't want to be stuck in the forest. They want to be able to see I said that wrong. They don't want to be stuck at the trees. They want to see the forest. They want to be able to do that kind of stuff. So whenever an organization needs a new direction, man, you need to pull these guys out of the closet and get them to do that. Coaching. This is somebody who's very good at like one-on-one help with people, say, how's it going? And he needs help with this kind of thing. Affiliative. Basically, this is a type of leadership where you emphasize the work in teams. If you have an environment that's very team-oriented, and there's an awful lot of IT work, almost all IT work is done in teams. Democratic, basically where you have some sort of a commitment to shared goals. It's not just like, well, I'm the boss. And we're not talking about voting on which way to go. That's ridiculous. But we're talking about taking into consideration the needs of everyone in the thing, whatever their shared goals are. Pace setting. This is the type of leadership where perhaps the pace setting works really good if the person who's the leader also did that job in the past, right? So they know, okay, how long it takes to do stuff. And so they have very high standards on how long it's going to take and the quality of the work. This doesn't work with a flip if that person in leadership has never done the job at the lower level. Okay. And then commanding. And commanding is the military style of, by God, I'm the second lieutenant, so you have to do what I say. And, that kind of stuff. And so autocratic and military style is probably not at all a good idea in an IT environment. Or to tell you the truth, outside of, a family-run business or the military, there's probably no need for an autocratic type of supervision. That's just bad. People will leave in droves. Okay. All right. Now, we're back to the honest to God, the planning factors. Remember all the things we talked about back here. Yay, we're back to this. Yay, okay. So on page 359, we've kind of left the pop psychology behind, and now we're talking about developing a plan. So on page 359, they talk about the first thing you need to do in a plan is to come up with a list of kind of people that you need. I need a programmer, I need a graphic artist, I need a web developer, I need a database person. You need to make a list of all the skill types you're going to need, right? Okay. So they have some organizational charts, some choices. So here's a particular one where they have a project manager and a deputy project manager, and then you have all these other people. So for example, systems and test and quality assurance and configuration and some sort of a project lead, and then there's several other projects. And if you were to use this in the case study environment, okay, then let's just say, for example, that on this radar rebuild thing, maybe this was hardware folks and this was the software folks and that kind of thing, right? You got these sub projects and all these teams working underneath them. Okay, so it kind of makes sense that you would separate like the hardware and software folks, because it takes different skills and different timelines and all those kinds of things. So it kind of makes sense. If the people who are going to be running, using soldering irons don't really need to be talking too much with the folks over here trying to figure out a while loop, right, in the software world. The two are not really the same. Clearly there's some synergy between the two, but it makes sense to have these sub-projects broken up by those kinds of things. So then we talk about defining and describing the tasks. So that kind of makes sense. So, and this is somewhat obvious, but I'll go through it. So they talk about, okay, I finalized the requirements. I know what the requirements are. Great. So now I need to figure out how the work is going to actually be accomplished. In other words, and one of the things here would be, like, this would be where you make the decision whether or not you're going to do it all in-house or you're going to contract out portions of it. So how will the work be done? And so kind of talk about teams. And then you break it down into manageable elements. Basically, we're talking about the work breakdown structures, or perhaps even the work packages. Get down all the way down to, breaking down the work into individual responsibilities. And then the last one is you assign those work packages. So from requirements to decisions on how to organize, to breaking down into work packages and assigning the work packages. That's kind of sort of what it is. So they come up with this term called an organizational breakdown structure, an OBS rather than a WBS. And basically what it's talking about is a special organizational chart that shows how these people are being assigned. And so the example here on figure 9.5 on page 362 is what they call the responsibility matrix. And so here are the WBSs going this way, and then here are the OBSs. That's kind of weird. Basically, the people. And so who's responsible for the responsible organizational unit and the performing? Who's responsible for it and who's going to perform it? So here's all the steps, and basically shows who's responsible for what. Kind of makes sense. Now the problem here is maybe you need more than just R and P, right? Maybe this is more complicated than that, because perhaps, I don't know, this task 1.1.2 requires some outside help, or it requires permissions from another party. So maybe we need more. Okay, and so to produce more, they have this kind of thing. This is called the RACI model, RACI. So R stands for responsibility. That means who does the work. Okay, so test plans. Group A is going to be responsible for doing the test plans. Cool. Accountability is who's going to sign off on this thing. Because it could be it's the same person, same organization, or it could be somebody else. Consultation. Consultation is who else out there has other info that I need. In other words, before I can do my test, I need some information. So yes, I'm responsible for producing the test plans, but I desperately need information from these people, otherwise I can't do my job. And then the last one is informed, which is, okay, I've done this, who do I need to tell that I'm done so they can do their thing? So they've just broken this thing up into little, instead of just R and P, now we have a few more letters in the alphabet. Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark. You know what happens.